Hello, I'm Sharon Young, President of Global Housing Foundation. Welcome to the Global Housing Foundation's annual program in support of United Nations Day. Today, we gather to tackle one of the most urgent challenges of our time, workforce housing. The Global Housing Foundation is proud to celebrate our 25th year of addressing challenges and mobilizing action to create housing for the working poor. In partnership with UN Habitat, the Global Housing Foundation is leading the way in building alliances across the public, private, academic, community, and governmental sectors to develop groundbreaking solutions that address housing shortages while laying the foundation for sustainable, thriving communities. This year's theme, Global Housing Blueprint for Nations in Crisis, focuses on developing innovative housing strategies for countries facing immense adversity, particularly those ravaged by war and natural disasters. Our program shines a spotlight on the extraordinary work being done in Ukraine, where Global Housing Foundation is not just rebuilding homes, but revitalizing lives and communities through innovative housing recovery efforts, offering a beacon of hope and resilience during disastrous turmoil. Throughout the program, we will confront the urgent housing challenges that nations affected by war and disaster face. More importantly, we will be showcasing cutting-edge, sustainable solutions being pioneered by some of the world's most brilliant minds, visionary leaders, innovators, and developers of the future who are daring to reimagine what's possible. But this program is not just about listening. It's about engagement and mobilization. Our mission is to empower you with the insights, tools, ideas, and connections you need to become the next wave of global housing innovators. You can make a difference. For example, we will showcase how one world-renowned artist is using his creative talent to make a profound difference in the lives of others. This serves as a reminder that each of us has our own unique ability to create positive change. This is also your invitation to engage with the Global Housing Foundation, explore groundbreaking opportunities, and connect with like-minded peers who share a common goal, delivering tangible solutions to some of the world's most pressing housing challenges. Together, let's turn today's conversation into real-world impact. Before we begin, I would like to introduce our board, who advocate for the continued conversation related to workforce housing. Our chairperson, Emeritus Owen Gwynn. Our late founder, Renee Frank's daughters, Debbie Frank Peterson, Robin Frank, and Colette Frankel, Frank Young, and Alyssa Nightingale. And now, to lead us through this inspiring program, it is my great honor to introduce our host, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist and New York Times best-selling author, Ellis Henican.
Thanks, Sharon. We have some fascinating conversations ahead of us today. So happy that you're here. I'm Ellis Henican, and I'll be guiding us literally around the world as we wrestle with some of the most challenging issues and some of the most encouraging solutions in the world of providing housing to nations in crisis, a true blueprint for nations in crisis. We're going to go from everywhere, from the hurricane-ravaged areas of North Carolina to the African nation of Uganda, Ukraine, a special focus today, that war-torn nation suffering so many issues, including a tremendous amount of displacement. We have to find homes for those people who have been ripped out of their housing by the ravages of war and all the other ancillary issues. And there's so much interesting work going on in this field. Artificial intelligence alone is changing so much. We have today a couple of true leading experts on using the tools of artificial intelligence to improve the housing opportunities for people in crisis zones around the world. It's a broad ranging and deep conversation. You want to be part of it. And along the way, we will describe some very practical ways that you can get involved in the important work of the Global Housing Foundation as we interact with our helpers and advisors at the United Nations and call upon your talents and your energy and your ideas to help us deal with this truly challenging issue. The encouraging note is that we really are making progress here. So you want to be part of it, the Global Housing Foundation. You want to join us for the conversations we have assembled today. Hold on tight. Some controversy, some issues, some interesting people. I'm Ellis Henican. Let's begin. One of the biggest challenges of this work of the Global Housing Foundation is that we do it in so many places. The crises pop up in the toughest corners of the world and often when you least expect it. So it's vitally important that we're able to navigate the different cultures, different languages, different continents, a whole series of different issues. Thankfully, we have the amazing assistance of the United Nations, already knowledgeable about every single corner of this planet, often with tremendous expertise on the ground. Not a day goes by that the Global Housing Foundation doesn't depend on the guidance and the expertise of the personnel at the United Nations, not only with technical expertise, but also with communications help, with just a huge variety of things that the United Nations is already out there, and so it already knows how to do. Standing at the center of that effort, Maher Nasser is the Director of Outreach at the United Nations Department of Global Communications, and so he necessarily has to navigate some of the most complicated situations in the world. Maher, real good of you to join us today. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Alex.
So let's start at the very beginning of this work. And there is a term that we keep using at the Global Housing Foundation that, boy, I would love for you to help us define. And it is sustainable development. When those two words are used together, what does that mean?
I think when the UN was created in 1945, we say, and we said at the time, that we have three pillars of our work. One is peace and security. The second one is human rights. And the third one is development. But now we talk more about sustainable development. Sustainable development means that as you invest and work to develop the community and economy that you are working with, you do not do so at the expense of future generations, so that you do it in a way that is sustainable, that it can still maintain sufficient resources for the coming generations.
So if the Global Housing Foundation is able to produce a handful of homes in a place of great crisis, we want to make sure that those homes are going to be there a generation or two from now, and that they don't crowd out other efforts to provide housing in that area. Is that a good way to think of it?
That's one way to think of it. The other way is also to consider that now we live in a world where climate change is wreaking havoc with more frequent and more intense weather storms or droughts. And therefore, when you think about building houses and building communities, you now have to factor in how do you ensure that they're also resilient in a world where they're more likely to be subjected to stronger wind, flooding, maybe droughts or fires.
Interesting. We think so often about the practicalities of this, hammers and nails and construction procedures, as well as funding. How do we raise the money? How do we get the people on the ground to do it? But communication is also a huge part of this business that we are engaged in here. And I know you're right at the center of that part. What are some of the challenges that you deal with?
I think in communications, when we live in a world today where communications and the world of communications has really changed in leaps and bounds in the last 10, 15 years. When you think about when I joined the United Nations, there was no internet. There was no social media. We had to rely on direct communication or communication through mediaries, through news organizations, through journalists. Now, the same goes for anybody else. You can go directly from the organization or the person to the world at large. Every person now has or can use a platform on social media to reach hundreds, thousands, and in some cases, millions of people. So that means that in the same way that there's more information, there's also more disinformation. There's more misinformation. And that complicates things, and particularly in crisis. We saw this head on in 2020 with COVID-19 pandemic. In any case, World Health Organization, any person working in the health sector will tell you that in the case of a pandemic, the most important prescription is information. So you have to make sure that information that is reaching the people in ways that they can understand is as accurate, as science-based, and correct as possible. But we have seen a flurry of mis and disinformation during COVID about the virus, the origin, how to protect yourself from it, how to treat it, as well as, of course, when the vaccine came around, whether the vaccines were safe or not, and so on. So we created a campaign called Verified, which was meant to really bring the level of changing behavior in a way that discourages people or encourages people to share verified information, science-based information, not mis and disinformation.
And I don't need to tell you, there is tremendous suspicion of institutions, especially large institutions, the institutions that come from far away. Do you find that a big challenge? What do you do to combat people who say, you don't really want to help me, you're here to hurt me for some reason?
I mean, you will always find conspiracy theories, and I think that's something
Sure.
that isn't new. What we do know is that we always work with facts. We always used verified facts, and people are free to check that directly. Science, I think some of these surveys that look at trust in institutions that definitely have suffered, but apparently trust in science is still very high up on people's agenda, and there's an increase in that. The other factor that we are working with, and I'm sure as a journalist you're familiar with this, is that with social media at the moment and the funding model of social media means that independent media is suffering a lot, and we see less and less independent media that usually conveys information once it's gone through an editorial process, fact checking. Now you see a lot of media that isn't. It's like a one-person platform becomes a media, and they can put whatever they want, and people are sharing it, assuming that it's factual. And that is a reality that I think we have to maybe give independent public interest media more support globally, because it is another way that people can, balance what they are looking at, whether it's true or false.
Yeah. One of the things that we keep finding at the Global Housing Foundation is that women play a crucial role in so much of this work. We've found that in the housing sphere, that if the women play a large role in the protection of that home, it's likely to be sustained better, that the family unity stick together better when women are involved. Are there things on the communication side that you and your colleagues at the UN do that reach out with that in mind?
I think it's more than just around communications. I mean, you started your question about sustainable development, and the world leaders adopted 17 sustainable development goals at the UN in 2015. And one of the core principles in them, sustainable development goal number 5, is around gender equality and the empowerment of women, because there is a recognition that there aren't enough women in decision-making processes in the private public sector, that when women lead, the type of decisions they make, and we know are different, and in more cases than not, are more about protecting the house or protecting, and there we have seen successful women leaders across the world. So gender equality and the empowerment of women is definitely something that we advocate for, not only as an SDG 5, but as a prerequisite for achieving the other ones.
Interesting. Well, Martin, as I listen to you, there's a question that's in my own head, and I like to put it to you directly. We talk so often about the many divisions in the world, and our world is certainly in crisis, and in some ways more divided than it's ever been. And yet at the same time, because of some of the tools that you've talked about, the internet, other digital technology techniques, we are in some ways closer to each other than we've ever been before. How do you balance that out? I mean, is this a world that's blowing apart, or is it a world that's coming together?
It's definitely a world that is different than the world that the United Nations was created in 1979 years ago. And I think that is a reality that member states have recognized. In 2020, the UN marked the 75th anniversary, and member states at the time recognized the world has changed and adopted a UN 75 declaration, whereby they requested the Secretary General to report back with recommendations to respond to current and future challenges. And part of those are some of the issues that you have mentioned. I mean, you can look at any glass and say it's half empty or half full. Is the world today more coming together or more pulled apart? But what we do see in September every year, world leaders come to the UN, and they adopted just last month a pact for the future, a document that talks about commitments to address issues, to how to implement the SDGs by the year 2030, how to deal with financing for development, how to deal with issues of science, technology, and digital equity, how to look after and work with young people and future generations. And one of those is also how to address the issue of governance. This is an organization that was created with 51 member states and a 2.4 billion people living on Earth. Today, we have 8 billion people and 193 member states. So we have also the internet, we have social media, we have AI, we have satellites, we have space exploration, and these are all things that didn't exist. So this Pact for the Future, the Global Digital Compact, a Declaration of Future Generations, were documents that were just adopted at the UN in recognition of the need to come to terms with the changed reality. Now, does that solve the problem? These documents have just been adopted, and now the challenge is how to actually work with what was agreed on to create this world that we all want.
Interesting. You know, as we look around the UN, we're inspired by the many non-governmental organizations that are doing all kind of great work in different challenging areas around the world. We're proud of what we've been able to do in our own small way, but we do also think about scale. You know, if we go somewhere and build a few dozen homes, or we're able to help one area, there are still 50 other areas that need help. Are there things that you've learned in your work that help to reconcile that? Because, you know, at the same time we're proud, we also feel like, my God, there's so much left to do. How do you think about that?
I think I don't see the UN only in New York and what is decided here in New York, which is really important because that's what lays out the framework of what I would call the normative part of the work of the UN, the resolutions, the conventions, the agreements. But I also see the UN in the field, in the countries where we have UN country teams working to protect and assist 131 million people who are fleeing war, famine, and persecution, whether providing food and assistance to more than 150 million people, vaccinating 45% of the world's children, and so on and so forth. And that is not done in isolation from working with civil society organizations, with local governments, regional governments, national governments. So the UN works hand in hand in those countries. And here in New York, we lay out the framework, but the real delivery is in the country level. We have 71,000 peacekeepers in 11 operations that are trying to maintain the peace so that once they are no longer needed, then we have another part of the UN comes in and works to build peace, to make it sustainable in a way that conflict will not come back to that community and that country. So the UN has the scaling up capacity, but also we have the connection capacity. We work with civil society organizations and we create framework conferences, for example, or events that they can come and learn from each other. They can support each other. We organized in May a civil society conference in support of the Summit of the Future in 9 and 10 May in Nairobi, in Kenya. We purposefully organized it in Nairobi so that it was the first civil society conference, a UN civil society conference that was held in Africa. The 70% of the participants were from Africa itself, 43% were young people, and they have come up with a proposal or an idea to create coalitions, multi-stakeholder coalitions that bring in civil society organizations, governments, international organizations, academia, private sector, to focus on some of the issues that member states have now adopted in the Pact for the Future and ensure that there's continuous advocacy for their implementation, but also to network and work together to really create best practices and then spread that around throughout the world.
Wow, well, we certainly are in need of those networks, as is the world. In our conversations today, we're going to be hearing from people who are on the ground and in some of the biggest crisis zones on planet Earth, getting details about some of their work, some of the lessons they've been learning, some of the challenges they still face. But we keep talking about creativity and innovation. What kind of role does that play in this sort of work?
I think creativity and innovation is why we are here, why we can talk to each other across, I don't know, cities or towns or villages. It's how humanity has managed to achieve all of the successes that we have. Creativity isn't only in science; it's also in other worlds. We work with the creative community as a UN Department of Global Communications to actually ensure that sometimes television programs, videos, films are not just documentaries that are based on interviews or material that we provide. We work with creatives that sometimes some of the ideas around sustainability are weaved into the plot, into the thinking. The issues like gender equality, issues like climate action and climate challenges are communicated in a direct or indirect way and reaching a wider community. We also work with the advertising industry, which is one of the most creative industries in the world, to ensure that their creative talent is not used to greenwash and to undermine the real work needed to take us to a better position. So creativity, innovation is something that we really engage with directly. And we hope that creators and innovators are always aspiring to benefit the wider community.
And that creativity and innovation, I know, can never stop. You know, one of the groups that we make a big effort to engage in our work, both on the volunteer side as well as on the service delivery side, are young people. Mm-hmm. We're convinced that it's important to get them deeply involved in our housing projects. Are there lessons that you have learned about that, the role that young people can play and how it is we can get them more engaged?
Young people are definitely more invested in a more sustainable and a peaceful future. The United Nations, we created an office of the Secretary General's Envoy on Youth 10, 12 years ago. And then last year, member states have created in the UN an official youth office headed by a young person who was the first or youngest Assistant Secretary General in the UN history. One of the documents annexed to the Pact for the Future is a declaration on future generations. One of the chapters in the Pact for the Future addresses the issue of youth and future generations. So there is a recognition and realization that young people need a place at the table, that issues that concern them, they need to have a voice in it. And I think we try to the extent possible, to provide that place for them to reach them in a different way so that they have the information and they can really have an informed decision or opinion. And then subsequently, whether they come through the UN or they work to advocate for those issues with leaders in community, private sector, government, then they have the information and tools handy.
Good, good. Because it can't just be a couple of old guys like us talking about young people. We need these young people involved directly, don't we?
We do indeed. I mean, this afternoon I met with a group of young people, high school students from Morocco, who have a UN club, and they are here, and they were here to meet and learn more about how they, as young students, can become more productive citizens of the planet in the future, global citizens.
Maher Naher, you are in the middle of all of this as the Director of Outreach at the Global Communications Department at the United Nations. We are really appreciative of your spending time with us today.
You're welcome. And as we speak, today is UN Day, and I think this is the day that we reflect on not only the achievements, but also the challenges that remain. How can we ensure there's a better tomorrow where everyone can thrive in peace, dignity, equality, and justice on a healthy planet? This is what we see as what we need to do on UN Day, and happy UN Day.
Happy UN Day to everybody out there. Thank you again, Mr. Nasser.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There's nothing quite like living in a war zone. You have to worry about whether your family will be harmed, whether your housing will be destroyed, whether your neighbors in your community will survive, and what they'll all be like when the fighting finally stops. It's a time and a place of anxiety to so many people, especially right now as we watch the continuing troubles unfolding in Ukraine. So much attention from around the world pointed at that beautiful land. The citizens there suffering under the tremendously difficult circumstances of an invasion from the much larger and more militarized Russian state, and trying to figure out how life goes on. And it's not just an issue for people who are there, who are living through it, but for their family members and friends and loved ones around the world who are trying to keep an eye on them, trying to provide the help that they can, trying to urge them to be as safe as they possibly can. So many Ukrainian Americans. We have a large population of folks who have family members and roots in Ukraine, now living in Europe and the United States and all around the world. Joining us now, Anastasia Kochuk-Berger, family back home, Ukrainian American teacher living in the suburbs of New York City. But Anastasia, constantly with your mind on your loved ones back home. Tell us a little bit about what that journey has been like for you.
Well, it's hard to explain, but it's been going on for a long time. So it's kind of it's not as intense as it was at the beginning. But it's still worrisome because I know that my parents are there, and I don't know if there is hope, in terms of the war ending one day. So it's mixed feelings. And my parents were planning to move to America, and then actually we were talking about them moving to America this summer, and then they changed their mind. So now they're not coming here. So, which adds more stress to me and my husband, because we don't know, they've been safe for all this time, even though where they live, this, Kharkiv, city of Kharkiv is very close to Russia. Thank God they've been safe, but there's still missile attacks that take place not far from their neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So we live with that constant worry. It's hard to explain. We kind of accepted it on one hand because it's been going on for a long time, right? And they've been safe. On the other hand, they're not safe. So it's very hard, It's not an easy situation.
Well, one thing I have learned from the Ukrainians that I have gotten to know is that they love their country. They treasure its independence, they desire its safety, and they don't often feel comfortable leaving, particularly at a time of crisis like this one. Is that true of your parents?
I think it's hard for them to leave as for any person at, at the age of 60. I mean, I'm not saying that they are old, but it's just hard to leave everything and go somewhere else where you don't speak the language, you don't know, you don't have stability, and you've just accustomed and used to everything. And that's the place where you've lived for all your life. And it's hard to just leave and go somewhere else where you don't know it, even though you have your relatives, still not your.
Tell a little bit about how their lives have changed over the past couple of years.
I think it has added more stress to them, and their social life is not, they spend more time home, and it's more stressful, definitely. And I think when they come to America, I notice that when they hear some noises, I think automatically they think, I mean, they don't think it's a bomb, but it reminds them, especially my mom, I noticed when they were here over the summer, they just get scared all of a sudden because it's just a reflex reaction to like a noise that reminds them of a missile or a bomb.
Yeah.
So I think I think that gives them a little
So,
bit more unease.
so the home, the apartment that they live in, is that intact? Are they living in their home now?
Yeah, they're living in the apartment. That's intact.
Okay, and in their area and in their neighborhood and their community, do they know people who have been less fortunate than themselves in that way?
Yeah, they know some people who have their apartments destroyed partially. They don't know any people directly whose apartments or houses have been ruined.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I just read on the news several weeks ago that one of the apartment complexes that's 3 minutes away from my parents' house, which is the neighborhood that I grew up in, I remember that neighborhood because I used to go to, that was on my way to school, to my elementary school, and that has a big hole in the apartment. So part of the apartment complex is totally damaged. But my parents don't know anybody directly. But my mom works for the school, the local school that's a couple of minutes away from my apartment, and that's partially bombed too. It has holes in the ceilings and things like that. So, and my mom still goes there and she works there a couple of days a week, and she just she's responsible. She's a librarian at school, but the school is damaged. It's destroyed. So yeah, they witness all of that. But thank God their apartment is intact.
Mm-hmm.
There were some people whose windows or balconies have been damaged, but and there are a lot of other residential buildings around that have been that are damaged too.
Sure. One of the things that we've learned at the Global Housing Foundation is that while obviously having a home destroyed is the worst case scenario, living with that danger and that anxiety and that never knowing who's going to be next, what's going to be next, how far can this go, what's happening, that extracts a cost all its own. And you can be one of the lucky ones, right? And still be living in your home, and yet you're never fully confident that the next bomb or missile won't be the one that has your name on it.
Exactly. Yes. Oh, I forgot to mention the summer house that my parents have, which is on the outskirts of Kharkiv, Kharkiv is the second largest city in Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
northeast. So the Russian they don't have access to the summer house anymore because it's the Russian soldiers. It's very close to the border. So it was dangerous to even go there. But for months, the Russian soldiers lived there while there were battles going on between our soldiers and the Russians. And now it's mined. So it's basically they lost the summer house, which is
Wow.
of their problems. But it's sad.
So let me ask you about your own feelings at a distance. Obviously, you have great concern for the safety of your family members. Are there feelings of my gosh, I wish I could do more, or I wish I could protect them, or I wish I could convince them to leave? Talk about some of those own battles that go on inside your head.
It's hard, I think I don't try to convince them anymore because we've gone through that path with my sister. We've done it many times, and then my parents. I think my parents are just tough Ukrainians. And their mentality is that, well, if nothing, if we have been safe for the
Yeah.
past 2.5 years, and everything is okay, and when they need to go see my grandma, they drive and everything is fine, and they hear a bomb they have a missile going off, and then they stop and they figure that, oh, well, maybe the missile attack is far away, and they keep going. So I think for them, it's something normal. For me, yeah, it's a shock, but I think I'm used to it a little bit too, unfortunately. And a lot of times when I hear there are missile attacks in my hometown, I automatically know that they're fine. I know it sounds insane, but somehow I know they're safe. I know it's kind of crazy, but it's like a normal thing for them. If there are A raid sirens, they just go down to the basement if they're, let's say, at a supermarket. And then when I talk to my dad and try to explain to him that, well, how is it safe if the residential building that's 3 minutes away from you, which is the neighborhood where I grew up, is half damaged, is there's a hole. I said, well, how are you safe if you're really not safe? Because the missile attack had happened like far, several miles away from you. His explanation is that, well, we follow the app. They have access to different apps that notify them about missile attacks, and supposedly they have my dad knows differences between different missiles and bombs, and he starts telling me what they do, and I'm like, no, dad, I'm just asking you. So he supposedly they know how many minutes, how much time they have to hide or to go down to the basement before a certain type of a missile hits. It's insane for you and me. It sounds crazy, but that's their life, and to them it's normal. And there's nothing I cannot convince him or anything else. He says, "Well, I have 5 minutes. This is this type of a missile at three C-300, and he's a former military, so he knows about missiles." And he tells me about missiles, and he tells me the differences. And I tell him, Dad, I don't need to know the technicality. I just need to make sure you're safe. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
okay to it. You can't win with my parents. No
I
matter
know.
what, they're fine. So I think we have given up. Well, they were about to move to America this summer, and then a month ago we had a conversation with them, and they've changed their mind. So so what do we do?
Well, Anastasia, I don't want to say anything to increase your anxiety, but let me say this to you. The inside all of us as human beings, we have an ability to deal with some very difficult circumstances, and to in a way, and you described it so eloquently, in a way, almost make these crazy circumstances sound like normal life. We
Mhm.
find ways to press on, to do what we need to do, to look after each other, to preserve the things we have, and to try and live the lives that we are committed to. I guess all I can say is they're certainly lucky to have you and your other relatives looking out for them. Boy, anyone who hears these stories, our hearts go out to the difficult circumstances, and we can say a prayer that they'll get through this difficult period, and that peace, ceasefire, and other sorts of peace will come that the Ukrainian people deserve. We're pulling for you here at the Housing Foundation, obviously, and trying to make efforts for housing in Ukraine. But just on a deeper human level, my God, I hope you have to stop dealing with this pretty soon.
I hope so too.
I see. God bless you, and good luck to your parents. I understand where they are, and we're pulling for all of you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
When the Global Housing Foundation was put together, the idea wasn't to build housing in easy places. It wasn't to create homes for families where that was no problem and they were already getting homes. It was to go into the most difficult places, the toughest neighborhoods, the most war-torn and disaster-ridden corners of the world. And so you know where this is heading, right? It's heading to Ukraine, because there is nowhere in the world that is dealing with the level of destruction, that is dealing with the complex living issues that are occurring across a major swath of Ukraine, as invaders from Russia continue to pound that country and people continue to try as well as they can to live there. So, of course, the Global Housing Foundation is on the ground, working with its partners, organizations like the Realis charitable group, and building housing, creating housing, saving housing for families who need it most. One of the key players in that effort, Andriy Yukomenko, joining us now, project manager with Realis. Are we talking to you from Ukraine right now?
Yes, I'm from Kiev, and I'm sitting right now in my apartment.
Okay, so people will have to understand if we hear sirens going off or blasts in the background, that's just part of life for you, right?
It is part of life. We may have sirens 4 or 5 times a night, and technically you need to go to bomb shelters, but people are so tired of doing this, so they prefer to go to inner room without no window, with no windows, and they consider it safe. And most of the time it's fine, but sometimes we have, like recently, we had a drone just drove into 8th floor into kitchen and just exploded inside. And so things like this happen, but everybody just playing sort of a roulette, a chance.
So Andriy, let's you and I start at the very beginning of this crisis here. Help folks understand why Ukrainians are still fighting so hard and risking so much to continue to live in Ukraine. Boy, I bet you a lot of people in the distant countries would say, man, if all that crazy stuff was going on, I'd want to get out of there as fast as I could.
Well, my family left Ukraine in February of 2022. Actually, I insisted for them to leave after I read the New York Times that war is inevitable. So I just insisted on them to leave. And they know well what is to live in Europe and also in America. And even though sometimes it's better country, better developed country, but you never feel like at home. You know, you're always a foreigner. At home, I learned this when I spoke to some of the people that are still staying at the border lines where we work in Chernihiv area, on the border with Russia. They prefer to live in a place that's heavily bombed than to go inside of Ukraine. For them, even inside of Ukraine, it's already a foreign place. So they just feel it. It's something, I would say, irrational. You just feel that you're at home, and there's nothing like that. I've been in many countries, and I always feel at home, only here.
Yeah. Well, I will trade you the word irrational for the word human. I think there is a connection that people feel and a level of security that they get even under very, very difficult circumstances that nothing can replace home.
No, I just met my parents. I talked to them. We tried to evacuate them, and we really insisted hard because they were on occupied territory here near Kiev. And we told them, you know, you just need to, my brother spent with them all night talking that you need to leave. And they lived in a condition with no windows, with 6 degrees centigrade, which I don't know how much Fahrenheit, it's very low, with Russian occupation, but they didn't want to leave. And my brother said, why don't you leave? And they said, we're going to die here. Yeah. We just feel at home.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can understand that. Listen, it's difficult to build housing in a first world country. It's difficult to build housing in peacetime. I can only imagine some of the challenges that you and your colleagues there face trying to provide housing for families in the middle of wartime. Would you describe some of those challenges to us, please?
The challenge is first is a scope. When you come to the place, some of the places you just look at that and think it will take decades to rebuild it. Mm-hmm. Some of the cities are totally destroyed. And when we first went to Bucha and Irpin, that's near Kiev, where a lot of this massacre was, I just look at the street and I just, you just walk on almost every house is broken. Every window is blown up. Every roof is broken. Some are burned to the stake. And you just look at and just think how to do it. And people, they just don't know what to do. But once you come there and you provide them some hope, like with these houses we've been building with Global Foundation, the main idea was to provide them a house on their piece of land where they can live and rebuild slowly their house. For the main thing is to somehow help them to stay in the place where they can rebuild their life. So it's in liberated places. In other places, they just cannot come there because it's not safe. And they're just waiting until it will be liberated, and it's going on years and years and years, and they just don't know they just don't know how to come back. And in new areas, the land is expensive, materials are expensive. Most of them don't have enough money to build it because sometimes they build their homes for whole their life, and that's they sometimes generations build a home. Now they lost it. Economically, they're just not able to do the same thing in different places.
Talk a little bit about the importance of that piece of land to a family. There's a connection there, a sense of security there that even in the face of destruction still is a very powerful force in people's lives.
Well, in several areas. First is their land, and they just feel at home there. Another one for many people there is a source of living. They grow vegetables. They have livestock. They just that's how they live. Many of them know how to live very cheaply. If you just look at people live on $100-$200 a month, you just start to think, how do they live? Mm-hmm. They just produce their food. They just live very modestly, but they collect money to build a home or buy a tractor. They're very thrifty, you can tell. So for them, land is something that helps them to survive on the level of money they get.
I have so many practical questions for you, Andrei. For instance, is it more sensible to try to repair a war-damaged home or to build a new home on that plot? I mean, that must be one of the first issues that you have to deal with.
It's all what we're talking. You know, we also work with United Nations and with their SMS. And so there are parts of it. There is a crisis, of course, the crisis reaction. And this part, you just need to provide some very cheap but safe place for them to relocate. And there are some homes that were damaged, and if the land is liberated, it's a really good thing just to close what we call the warm belt, to make it warm. It doesn't look nice. It doesn't look anything fashionable, but it's just warm. You can live there. But then later you just start to think how to rebuild it. And so if it's liberated, then you start to rebuild and build new homes.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated by the gradual process. It sounds to me from what you're saying that simply getting started in a practical way is very important, even if you don't have all the future details worked out at the beginning.
Yeah, many of them just don't have everything. But for them, for instance, like the house that Global Foundation sponsored, you just put it there. It's nothing fashionable. It's nothing real huge.
Mhm.
But they continue life, and I think eventually they will build something. I think I'm almost sure that if war stops, they will find ways to build something.
Now, one of the tough realities in Ukraine, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, is that sometimes territory is occupied, then liberated, then occupied again, then liberated again. Is the fluidity of the situation on the ground one of the challenges that you guys have to deal with?
Oh yeah, big time. Unfortunately, this year we don't have liberated land. This year we have only occupied one more.
Mm-hmm.
The story about liberation was 2022 when Kiev area was liberated, Chernihiv, Kharkiv area were liberated. The main challenge that we deal with is working with some of the areas which are on the border with either Russian border or border front line.
Mm-hmm.
And you never know when it comes closer. So the question is, like we work on some border place, it's called Semenivka in Chernihiv area, 13 kilometers from Russian border. And there are hundreds of people that need some place to stay. But everybody tells us, don't build anything because we don't know if the front line will be closer, if it'll be more explosion. Maybe they need to go to in the middle of the country.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to go to the middle of the country. As a result, they live in very poor conditions. And so you just, your heart is almost torn. You want to help them, but then rationally you start to think, what is more practical? To bring them inside of the country or to build there. So we just find places almost on the edge, like 30 kilometers from a war zone, and people move there.
Yeah, just close enough, but not too close. Andrei, talk to us about some of the mechanics of this. How you choose who to help, what kind of houses you're building, what do you need to do to actually make these things come up out of the ground?
Yeah, we developed this system in our organization, Realis Charitable Foundation, when we saw the need in Irpin, and we had also some partners from Europe, and from the very beginning we decided to have it on with sort of standards, international standards for help. So Realis Foundation has developed a system. We just put it online and just put a form and said that just fill in if you need the help. But we want to have single women. We would like to have women with children, and they applied. And so we had a long list of things. And when you just look at this, there's no way we can do it. There's much more people that we can help. So we had to decide. So as a result, we collected a group of people in the area, and it's included some leaders, some religious leaders, some volunteers, and also local kind of authorities. And they just collected, and we had criteria. And one of the criteria was women and children, most vulnerable. We just look at these criteria, and they just went and estimated who needs the most. And we had to, it's very painful, but we had to cut. And there is a long waiting list that we still have that we need to help. And then we just started to see solutions how to do this. And so I just went around and just saw some of the houses that people were already building. And I just found several firms that were doing this homes. They were modular homes that were done for dacha place, for this in the good times. So I went to them and just said, can you do it? So we just found several of them, selected, went to see their factories, check how they dry wood, how they do things, a lot of checks, and then just ordered and just look how they ordered. We tried them on different spots. We just asked them to do some changes. We actually developed a design that was really good for us. It was not too big, but it wasn't really tiny, so people just felt very squeezed. And so once we build it, and then the process is that the house is built for several weeks at the factory, and then put in two parts. Then we put it on trucks. The trucks come to the spot, and the foundation is being laid there, and they just assemble it right at the place. And basically, in one day, the house is ready. So it takes up to 2 to 3 weeks to have one house, and it's we just calculate. It's about $20,000 per house, and you have family live. And it's much less than if people would decide to build a new house, maybe twice, 3 times less.
So I agree. You spent a couple of decades as a journalist, traveling around the world and covering some very, very difficult stories. But now you're on the other side of the equation. You're in there working with people, trying to make their lives better, not simply reporting on these disasters, but trying to improve the lives of those people who are living through them. Talk about that transition in your own life and in your own world. Has that changed your view of these kinds of conditions?
Yes, changed when I basically stopped my journalism in March of 2022. And the story was, actually, I was going to continue, and I was going to go with some British journalists to the front line and to report. But it just didn't happen, didn't work. Long story, I don't want to go into details. But then my friend from Kiev, which was almost surrounded at that time, called me and said, do you know any place to get food for Kiev? Because we have shortage. It's a capital, but we have shortage of food. I said, I don't know, but I have friends and I will call. So the minute I put my phone, another friend called me and said, I have a truck of food. Do you know where to get it? I say, yes, I know where to get it. He said, do you know how to do it? I say, I don't know how, but I have my journalist connections and I have my friends and I will call. So I called and they just gave me a simple paper, which was signed something close to president. And we just got on the truck with no documentation, with things. And when I was driving on that truck next day, I just called my newsroom and said, sorry, guys, I know news are important. I know it's important to influence, but people need food. I'm sorry, I quit. And plus, I don't think economic journalism, which I was, is not that, it's not the moment for economic journalism now. So soon I started to, our foundation with other foundations started to bring a lot of food. We brought just trucks, Kiev, Kharkiv, Kherson area, and that was my job, just to figure out how to do it. We just did not know what to do, and being a journalist just helped to know connections. If I don't know something, I just push and I just find somebody who knows something. And people helped. Some people that I used to take interviews with helped me to do other things. We were just almost like one team, newsmakers and reporters and charity workers and other people.
What a great story. It sounds like you found meaning for yourself and the ability to help other people when it was needed most. I know that there are so many people around the world who read in the papers and see on television about some of the challenges in Ukraine. Housing, obviously, one of the big challenges that you're in the middle of right now, and people want to know, what can I do to help? What can I do to advance this? Organizations like the Global Housing Foundation, obviously a part of those solutions, but are there things that you have learned that folks in the outside world might not be aware of that you'd like to share?
Well, first, I think we are very fortunate with support, especially at the beginning. We felt the support of the rest of the world on a big scale. You might know that it's a second attempt of Ukraine to get independence. First was in 1917, and that time in the world, nobody recognized Ukraine. And Ukraine basically fell, and Russia just took it over. And now we just felt Britain, we felt United States, we felt everybody, and I think it's really helped. Another thing that, but now I think everybody, for many, it just became like a routine, and people start to think about other things. We're not in the press anymore. People think, oh, it's some local conflict. It's not a fight between democracy and authoritarianism. It's just some inside fighting in the south. I think people become kind of used to it. They just don't think much about Ukraine. They just, I just heard, you guys, you just go and make peace with Russia. Well, nobody really asked how to do the peace. I think it's not yet. I think Russia doesn't want peace. There's no way to do it. But people, we just tired of Ukraine. So I think the main thing that people need to aware that war is not finished. We have a lot of damage. We have a lot of needs. We have a lot of people that lost their homes. It will take decades to rebuild Ukraine. And I think organizations like Global Housing Foundation, they just feel it. And when they help this single women that they build house for,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just saw how their life changed. I think they. I don't know. We probably should ask them what they felt, but it seems like I felt that something very important happened. It may not be a huge thing, but if one family is changed, it just shows that people are caring and that people together can change things. I think we need to understand that here are the same human beings. They like to be free. They need help, and if you help them a little bit, they will continue living further. The war is not finished, and the problem is still there, and a lot of people are still in need. And it's not that they are beggars or just, we just want to live on somebody. It's working in a charity foundation. I realize how you need to be very careful about people you help. You don't want them to feel that they're beggars. Or they just some people that load, and they just happen to be in the worst in situation you are not. And you need just to preserve their dignity. And so when you help them, you just need to understand that you just help people in trouble. You may be in the same trouble sometimes, and you want somebody else to help you. That's one thing I learned as a charity worker. You need to really respect those you help.
Yeah, well, it sounds like the need is going to be with us a good long while. The campaign to try and provide decent housing, as you say, years, decades to come. The target is moving, but let me tell you, it's a whole lot better to have people on the ground who are guiding these efforts, bringing in some expertise, helping people deal with these life crises. Boy, you have our support and our best wishes in your continuing efforts. Andrei Yukimenko, Realis is the organization project manager there on the ground in Ukraine. Thank you so much for talking with us, and especially thank you for your continued efforts on a very difficult terrain.
Thank you very much, and thank you for talking to Realis Charitable Foundation. We're just very thankful to American help, to help of people of America, and to Global Foundation especially, and especially that they care for people, not for some big programs or things, but for real people. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is a happy day for life of Alena and her daughter Nastya Krasevich from Irpin. Thanks to Global Housing, they have a new home. Little Nastya is looking for a place to display her artworks. They depict important moments in her life.
Це картина, яку я малювала Це історія тут дівчинки, то що вона взяла своїх собак і всіх собак з Ірпеня. І просто вивезла з Ірпеня, щоб вони там не померли, щось там з ними не случилось.
But there are other, more peaceful memories in Young's artist collection of her happy childhood with her favorite dog before the war. Now, Alena and Nastya have a different reality and different memories. They had to flee war.
Ми тоді тимчасово виїхали в Черкаську область до родичів. І коли ми ще там були, мені сусідка присилає фото, каже, це фото спутника якось. І каже, ти можеш узнати, де ваш будинок? І я тоді перше побачила на тому фото, що будинок є, а без криші. Тобто воно так, квадратики тільки намальовані. Не уявляла, що воно прямо в такому стані. Це якесь гніздо було таке родинне, щось близьке дуже.
For Nastya, it was like being in another life.
Тут сестра моя приїжджала, ми тут бігали, там є скамейка, ми там малювали.
But now it's time to change their future.
Коли ми прокинулися, мама сказала, ми йдемо прибирати в подвір'я, щоб нам поставили будинок.
And soon the work began. And now the professionals started to work. They drilled holes in the ground, the columns were filled with concrete, the foundation of the new building were laid. The time was short, winter is coming, and the snow started. Finally, the house is there. Alena is happy to see her new home. She is even happier because the next day is her birthday. What a wonderful surprise. It takes 5-6 hours to install the house, and the work continues until the end of the day. This is how Global Housing's Ukrainian partner, the Ellis Charitable Foundation, is overcoming the consequences of Russian aggression in Ukraine, house by house.
Since the beginning of the war, Realis Christian Center was involved in several big projects to help people who suffer from the war. This project, which is to help people to receive their buildings, is a special one because we concentrate on helping people to return to normal life in the place where they used to live before the beginning of the war. Only here in Irpin, near Kiev, Realis helped 28 families, and this is 29th building already to receive place where they can live.
It gets dark early in winter in Ukraine, but the builders were determined to finish the work. And now there is a light in the house. There is a wood-burning stove for the times when there is no electricity. There is a shower cubicle. Two comfortable rooms and a kitchen. Life goes on.
Це новеньке, пахуче.
This particular house was donated to people of Irpin because of the generosity of Global House organization, and we are very thankful to our new partners who help us in these very important building projects. And we invite more people to be engaged in this help as we do this project, as we put this house on its place. We see more people coming on the street nearby, seeing us and asking us to help them. Would you please become partners in this special project to give people housing in the place where they used to live for generations? Thank you.
The people of Uganda have been through so much over the years: natural disasters, political corruption, border wars, every kind of human challenge you can imagine, and quite a few others that have been bestowed by nature. But one thing you can say about the people of Uganda: they do not lack spirit. They have an energy and an openness and an eagerness for the future that makes them just the kind of people that those of us around the world who are trying to be helpful can find strong partners in. Right at the center of that effort on the housing side, Lillian Butunji Nawagaba is a director of the Center for Global Health at New York Institute of Technology, and also a volunteer with the Kellerman Foundation, and has been working hard to try and improve the housing options for people in Uganda. So good to see you, Lillian.
Good to see you.
So I want you to get us right in the middle of this challenge. We have all read for years about some of the things, the challenges that the people of Uganda have gone through. But I'm now hearing that there are at least some small signs of hope coming from that part of Africa. And I believe that you're right in the middle of it. Would you tell us what you've been up to?
Yes, there is a whole lot of hope in the people of Uganda, and especially the displaced people. They have a foundation that helps them buy land and build homes. And it is a very, very interesting foundation. And if you get some time to look at it, you will see that they are building at least 20 homes per year. And their plan is to build at least 36 homes every year. And it is very interesting, and people are working hard. And yeah, that's it.
So am I right about the way I described Uganda and its people? They have dealt with a lot of difficult stuff over the years, but the spirit of the Ugandan people really does keep pressing forward. Is that your impression?
Yes. The people of Uganda are very resilient. They work hard and they try to make sure that, everything works well. And, the housing, especially, for the refugees, for the displaced people, they are doing incredibly well. Yes.
Terrific. So tell us a little bit about this particular program. So who are you trying to help? What kind of housing are you building for them? And what are the long-term hopes about what that housing might achieve?
Basically, the people we are trying to help are the Batwa people.
Mm-hmm.
And they are a people that lived in the forest a long time ago. And the government kicked them out of the forest to make way for tourism, which was very unfortunate. And when they came out of the forest, of course, they were not used to life outside the forest. So a lot of them died. And so this organization kind of stepped in and started helping them and buying them land and building them homes that they could stay in so that they don't succumb to the elements. Yeah.
So tell us what these houses are like. Describe one of the houses for us if you can.
Oh, so the houses are very interesting. They have a machine that makes interlocking bricks, and they just build it like in a week. And for a brick house to be put up in a week is incredible. So you have to have people working the machine and making the bricks. They use original soil of the land. They
Mhm.
mix in a little cement and just a little bit of water, and that's it. They make the bricks. And the bricks come out like they are set, they are already done. And they just put them together as, they are building them, and that's it. That's all that you need.
So how do you make sure that once the house is built and a family moves in, that they will be able to maintain that house and continue to ensure that that house does what it's supposed to? Because that's a long-term proposition, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it's a long-term preposition, but the people, they understand that that's a long-term preposition. And they keep the house, they make sure that it is clean and worked on and everything. They just make sure that they have a healthy life in it, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, talk about the need. This is a couple of dozen houses that you're talking about. Has it been hard to pick which families you can provide a house for? Is there greater demand than you were able to meet? Talk about things from that direction if you can.
Yeah, there has been a great demand for the houses, and it is kind of sad because we have to prioritize. You have to see people with small children, people who need housing like right away, and then you build for them. And also you have to make sure that the people actually are gonna live in the house, and we buy the land and we build the house and make sure that the people who live there maintain it.
Mhm. Talk a little bit about the role of women in this. I know that at the Global Housing Foundation, in similar projects around the world, we have discovered that it's very important to make sure that the women have a strong stake in these houses. Has that been an issue at all in Uganda?
Of course, of course, of course, women make the difference. Women make most of the difference because they seem to be the breadwinners of the home, so to speak. They are the ones working hard, and we have to make sure that they are supported, and they till the fields, they work hard, they dig, and we have to make sure that we support them.
Now, Lillian, when you and your fellow volunteers with the Caliban Foundation or some of the folks at the New York Institute of Technology, when you stand back and look at this project, what is it that you worry about? What is it that could be the problem here? What do you need to make sure doesn't happen?
What we make sure doesn't happen is that they don't either sell the home,
Okay.
because the home is very profitable, and that they make sure they maintain it and make sure that they keep it. And for us, when we build, we make sure we are building for a family, a certain family, and we make sure that it is theirs and they keep it and make sure that they take care of it.
Describe for us, if you can, the difference this makes in the life of a Ugandan family. How is their life before, and how has it changed by having access to this housing?
Oh, the difference is incredible. Because before they lived in grass huts, and now you have given them a brick home. This means a difference to their health. This makes a difference to their lifestyle. This makes a difference to their whole being, and we make sure that they realize all that. The kids are healthier, the parents are healthier, and everybody works to make sure that they are healthy.
But it takes more than housing to sustain a healthy life, doesn't it? I understand you're doing some things in the health field as well.
Yes, we have a hospital that is a 155-bed hospital. And we have a nursing school that has about 400 students in it. And so we are working hard to make sure that this community stays healthy, stays resilient, and, stays very strong. And yeah.
Just the kind of private-public partnership that we were always trying to encourage here at the Global Housing Foundation. So Lillian Niwagaba, along with your work in Uganda, you are also direct the Center for Global Health at the New York Institute of Technology, where you guys were able to take a bit more of a global view of these things, not just one nation, but trying to figure out how all of the nations of the world intersect with each other, especially where they're having challenges in the health field. Tell us a little bit about that, if you would.
Yes, at the Center for Global Health, we make sure we train our students to have core competencies for the 21st century. And those core competencies range from travel to cultural competency to the global burden of disease, to all the things that you can think of that go into healthcare. And so we have certificates in global health. We have medical externships. We have a lot of work that goes into that. We hold global health grand rounds. We have electives where students go abroad by themselves and do the work that needs to be done. And so, yeah, we are busy. We stay busy.
So there has been a criticism of the medical profession over the years that even as technology has advanced and we've had these new surgeries and new drugs, that sometimes the professionals don't do a good job interacting with the patients, with their people they're needing to help. Is this part of trying to bridge those differences?
Yes, we try to bridge those differences by making sure our students reach out to diverse patients, and not just abroad, but here locally as well. But abroad, we make sure that they have the cultural competency. They understand that, these are patients, we have to deal with them, and we make sure that they have the skills to work with them.
So tell me about the problem here. If a doctor or a nurse or another medical professional lacks that sort of cultural competency, what is it that we worry about? What bad things might happen?
Bad things that might happen, he may misinterpret the patient's history and not understand where the patient is coming from. And that's a very big problem in medical care. And so we try and make sure that they have those skills that understand where the patient is coming from, the historical aspects of their disease and things like that.
So if the patient doesn't feel comfortable with the professional, the patient might not even seek help, right? They don't trust the doctor.
Exactly.
They're not going to come to the doctor. Am I right?
Exactly. So we want to make sure that the patients have the physicians have the empathy and the kindness and the compassion to draw these people in and make sure that they help them.
So how do you teach that?
We teach it basically through experience, through external fellowships and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you find that the students are open to it, or is it a struggle to convince them to have the interest?
Most students are open to it. Most students are open to it and they embrace it wholeheartedly because it has to do with empathy, and that's what brought them into the medical profession to begin with. And basically, once they have that empathy and compassion thing down, from there they take off just like anything.
Well, good people ought to make good medical professionals, especially if they have the cultural training they need to do it effectively. Sounds like important work.
Very, very important work. Thank you.
Boy, it's hard to choose which is more important, decent housing or the kind of healthcare that will actually deal with the needs that people have. Lillian Niwagaba in the middle of both of those issues, trying to make sure that the folks in Uganda and elsewhere are getting the reliable, sustainable housing that they need, as well as doing her work, providing culturally sensitive healthcare. There you are, as the director of the Center for Global Health at the New York Institute of Technology, working with the Kellerman Foundation. Boy, you have your hands full, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And it is important because housing and health, they are really connected. Because for patients to have healthy lives and be resilient and live sustainable lives, they have to have good housing. And so it is very important that, we help them with the housing, and it is picking up actually. Uganda as a whole is picking up this housing strategy and trying to use it for the refugees and for the displaced people and for everyone.
Well, we will not make you choose one or the other. Hand in hand, health and housing continue to go together. Lillian, thanks for spending time with us.
Oh, thank you so much.
So my friends keep telling me about smart homes. Apparently, I live in a dumb home, but I'm learning from people that I know that there are now digital doorbells and cameras out on the porch, and ways that they turn the microwave on while they're commuting from home, and adjust the temperature, and all that stuff sounds amazing to me. I've lived a long time without it, but when you take these issues from personal first world convenience to the kinds of things that people deal with in places where housing is really a crisis, it isn't just a matter of inconvenience anymore. It can truly become a matter of life and death. Standing right at the center of this burgeoning human progress, Sterling Universal Group, one of the private parts of this public-private partnership that we are engaged in here, has been right at the forefront of that kind of development, bringing technological solutions to some of the biggest issues, especially in the area where housing collides with healthcare, because those two great human needs are so often intertwined. Joining us now, Parna Prasad, who is the CEO of Sterling Universal Group, and John Power, the Chief Operating Officer, here to take us into what to me just sounds like a glorious new world. Am I right that my video doorbell doesn't hold a candle to some of the things that you guys are doing, Parna?
Absolutely. So a video doorbell not only is our traditional doorbell, but it actually gave us extra sensory perception, basically an eye and an ear. Mm-hmm. And it's actually created a wholesome information package where you could see the person and hear the person. The advantage is the cost of technology has gone down so much that a doorbell is affordable even to a third world country, or even to just give it away because of the value it actually brings in enhancing safety as well as quality of life for the third world countries.
Yeah, so if you think about how, communities form, right, whether first world or third world, right? If you think about how communities form, people band together for security, right? So, if you're in a place where there's lions, you band together to avoid the lions, right? And as you build a community, that community has needs that go across the entire community, right? So if shelter is one, then food's the next. And as you start to go down this hierarchy of needs, you eventually get to healthcare, right? And that's kind of where we focused our technology, is on the healthcare aspects, where we can provide access to healthcare from places that are not necessarily accessible. Whether technology solves a lot of problems if you use it appropriately. It can create them if you don't, right? So if we're providing access, we're providing the ability for people that are not necessarily near a hospital to access a doctor that would be in a centralized hospital, routine care, screening, checking people's basic vitals to see if they need certain medications, assessing what medications there might be a need for, just general health can be managed through technology. Our solution is based on a robotic platform. So we're using robots here in the United States to solve some of these healthcare issues. But in a third world nation, the platform still has value, right? Because it's the access to the services that's critical, not necessarily the robot running around doing it.
So Parna, take me into a home in a remote village in a third world country where there's not a nearby hospital or a doctor who can easily show up in the moment of crisis. What are some of the things that you can bring into that home that can make a difference for the people who are living there?
Let's take the example of a doorbell itself.
Okay.
The current doorbells can provide video, it can provide audio, and with a little bit of enhancement can even provide haptic interface. These are the three necessary sensory perceptions that the doctor needs in order to assess a patient. The beauty is the doctor could be far off, and just looking at the patient, talking to the patient, and touching the patient through haptics, and it's very easy to measure their pulse, their respiration, and even their blood pressure just with camera technology to get an assessment of where they are. Are they at the border? Are they in the safe range? And immediately deploy the services needed. So the same doorbell, when actually turned around, becomes a very powerful telemedicine tool.
So John, even sitting in the middle of New York City, my doctors increasingly want to see me on a video call instead of having me come into their offices. Is what you're talking about an extension of that, simply bringing that need and those economics into far off and difficult to reach places?
Well, it's that and then more, right? So, the pandemic that we recently went through kind of changed the way our doctors interface with us, right? So yes, there's a Zoom call and the interaction is over a video conference, and they can kind of see you and assess how you're doing. And you might have here in New York, you might have some devices at home to measure your blood pressure, and you can just tell the doctor what it says, right? Mm-hmm. In a scenario where you're talking about a third world area, right? Access to that telemedicine, it might be the only option that they have, right? For one. So what you want to do is you want to create a scenario where you're providing, let's say in a home, patient monitoring, right? So just generally, how's somebody doing? We built in our platform, we've integrated artificial intelligence where we can do things like measure somebody's propensity to have a likely fall event, and falls for an older population are highly problematic. We can measure somebody's vitals over time. We can look at temperature through thermal imaging. We can do a lot of different things through AI to monitor somebody in a home or in a community center or wherever it might be that's going to give them access to healthcare. But all of that monitoring gives a good picture. So even if you don't have persistent internet or persistent teleconnections, you can periodically get that information out and get the benefits of that information being given over to a healthcare professional back into wherever it is you are.
Interesting. Part of the so I can get how this would work with checking my blood pressure or my temperature, or maybe taking a look at me through that camera and seeing if I look yellow. But how sophisticated can this get? I mean, could we really provide life-saving healthcare through a system like this?
Yes, because the entire monitoring spectrum of vitals is using electromagnetic waves. Infrared, as John was mentioning, can actually look at the thermal imaging and the thermal camera. Then ultrasound can practically measure your blood flow. And then other electromagnetic waves can look at the skin temperature. It can look at the arterial flow. You can get a very good holistic view into a person's physiology and even anatomy very quickly through these very basic camera technologies. See, the intelligence is not in the hardware, it is in the software and the augmented or artificial intelligence that powers it.
Interesting. But so you've got to have people on the other end who can analyze this data. No?
You don't need people. You just need a very intelligent AI environment called the large language model that learns through every iteration.
So John Powell, I want you to fantasize a second. I mean, this sounds amazing what you're doing now, but my guess is that we're just at the beginning of this artificial intelligence revolution. Are you looking forward to the day when we'll be doing surgery and serious procedures and providing all kind of other medical care in this sort of a way?
Well, you know, it comes down to this whole concept of human autonomy, right? So and being able to scale an individual. So I don't foresee a world in a future state where the robot's going to do the surgery without any kind of consultation from a human being, right? Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, computers are as smart as they might seem. Computers are really kind of dumb tools that only do what you tell them to do, right? And that includes artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is mimicking human intelligence, not actual human intelligence, right? So what we're looking to do is to provide access, to provide an augmentation of people that are in the system. There's, and the problem is existing all over the world, but just here in the United States, there's 2 million healthcare professional jobs that are unfilled because there's nobody to fill them, right? And that problem extends across the entire globe, right? So the goal here is not to replace humans in the healthcare paradigm, but to augment the humans that are in the paradigm to the maximum effect by leveraging technology, right?
Yes, in many cases, you're talking about places where there are no humans, right? I mean, there's a shortage of people able to get to some of these remote locations. Medical care is a scarce resource that is not very well spread out around the world. How do we pay for this stuff? I mean, some of these things, they got to be expensive, aren't they?
No, not anymore. They were very expensive in the 80s and 90s because the cost of hardware has come down significantly, number one. Number two, the entire intelligence is in the back end, in the software and the AI environment. Mm-hmm. Now, the coming of the AI, what's happened is it basically is an environment. It's not a particular task assigned through a programming interface, but it's an environment that actually learns. So the cost of care goes down significantly. Not only that, it adds value because it can actually give you surveillance for 24 hours, which is impossible through a human participation because it gets very expensive. And John can talk about some of the healthcare services where we can reduce the human interactions needed and augment them with robotics.
Yeah, so I want to hear that. John, do me a favor, get to the beginning of the equation here, because here at the Global Housing Foundation, we often think about innovative ways to build new housing and how do we create living environments for people that are sustainable, that are affordable, and that can meet their needs. Is this stuff we should be thinking about even as we're building houses?
Yeah, because the technology could be integrated into the house itself, right? So, with a system of cameras and speakers and microphones, which, you can buy a camera for $20, a microphone for $2, right? And a speaker for $4, right? So, and you can integrate them into the house, feed them into a computer of some sort, and it doesn't have to be a massively expensive computer, mm-hmm. right? And that computer has connectivity to a more centralized location. You could provide a massive amount of informational monitoring on every individual in that house, right? The system deployed in the house would differentiate between the people in the house, would track people over time, would be able to, tell you that, grandma's her gait is starting to pitch forward a little bit. You got to watch out for falls, be more careful, right? There's so many things that the computer then could just kind of prevent problems, right? Because once a major problem happens, that's when the cost of care skyrockets. But if you can prevent problems before they really happen, you have a much better overall cost structure. And, when you have an emergency, emergencies are going to have to, if we can extend the time between emergencies, you're going to reduce the cost structure of the entire system.
So four panels.
Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
The 4 panels to build a house
Mhm.
is basically already has the built-in visual cameras, the microphones, also other sensors, pressure sensors, flow sensors. You basically have the most intelligent house that actually is pre-manufactured and hence reducing the cost, but can provide that healthcare because it's an intelligent house.
So on the way out the door here, I want to ask each of you the same question, and John and Parna, hear your responses to it if you can. This stuff all sounds amazing, and clearly there would be plenty of people who would benefit from it if we could get it into their homes. If we could do one thing that would advance this effort, that would help spread it around the world, bring it to people that it needs, what's the holdup? What is it that we need to overcome? Is it funding? Is it government support? Is it acceptance on the ground? What are we going to do to ensure that if we're talking a year from now or 10 years from now, this stuff is everywhere? John, you want to take that first?
Yeah, so I think, what's really enabled this type of technology to become more pervasive and start to grow is the advent of AI. And AI is a relatively new phenomenon in terms of technology.
Mm-hmm.
So having a picture or a video image of somebody without the ability to analyze that independently doesn't really have a lot of value. It's the AI that's more recently become prevalent and available, right? And in some cases, so what we've done is we've built our own large language model that's specific to healthcare. So we've gotten rid of the noise that's not focused on somebody's well-being. And our LLM would allow those images to have meaning, right? So, and that's a relatively new phenomenon. So I think the world is heading in that direction, and companies like ours are pushing to provide that those types of solutions to the world.
So, Parna, John focuses on the advances that are coming in artificial intelligence. Are there challenges as well in the outside world with funding and acceptance and moving this thing in a bigger way globally?
Yes, there are lots of challenges in terms of funding and acceptance. And the only way to get through it is to select a certain population and hand over this technology to them so they can start using it in the economically challenged countries and in the countries that we are basically looking at. Because the AI, the artificial intelligence, basically learns from the workflow of these users, and users will get more comfortable using this technology. It's a win-win situation for both. And the only way to do it is to put it in the hands of the user.
So, guys, people live in all kinds of hugely difficult circumstances. So war zones, disaster zones, places where their very existence is at risk. Parna, are these solutions that can be brought to situations like those?
Absolutely. And the advantage is the AI can power any of the edge device. And the two very well-known edge devices that can actually get into a disaster zone or a war zone with very minimal or no human intervention. One is the drone, another is the robot. So a robot is a flying drone, and a drone is a terrestrial robot, that's all. So it's very easy to drop them in. And because of the satellite technology, especially the micro satellite technology like Starlink, we can get them connected very fast. Not only will we have eyes and ears on the patient and the environment, but we'll be able to respond with the right type of intervention, whether it comes to medication, gadgets, or whatever, being at a distance and not putting other humans in the harm way. Absolutely.
So, John, can people be taught to execute these things on their own? When that drone drops that package on my roof, can I figure out how to use it?
Yeah, so the drone also has a camera, and you can put a little screen there, and it could be a two-way communication where the person who provided you with the package could also explain to you how to use the package, right? So whether it's a antibiotic because of an infection that somebody's having, or it's a defibrillator because somebody's having some cardiac problems. how do you place it? What do you do with it? Right? There could be two-way communications from a robot or from a drone. And the person who has sent the device with on a robotic solution, drone or otherwise, can also stay in communications and explain to you what to do with it once you get it.
Amazing stuff. Parna Prasad is the CEO, John Power, the Chief Operating Officer of Sterling Universal Group, and both of you have made me feel like I live in a very, very dumb home. I appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having us. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Good. One thing we keep learning about natural disasters, they have minds of their own. You think the storm's going to go to the east and it swings to the left. You think it's going to be a horrible hurricane. It turns out to be nothing. And once in a while, those disasters that we don't really prepare ourselves for, they become the worst of all. It's true of hurricanes and earthquakes, wildfires, you name it. If it's part of the wrath of nature, it is in significant degree beyond human control. And so it is with Hurricane Helene, coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, going as many American hurricanes do into the west coast of Florida. But that's not where the real damage was, surprising almost everyone. The true devastation of this storm hit, of all places, western North Carolina, a beautiful, a bucolic, mountainous area. Asheville, the big city, surrounded by many smaller towns. The floods have been horrific. The devastation has been profound. The rebuilding has really only started, and people's lives have been thrown into tremendous uproar. At the center of that unfolding drama, Gareth Gwynn is the co-founder of the Asheville Community Relief, and is one of the victims, and I guess we can now say one of the survivors of Hurricane Helene. You are surviving, right?
Yes, I was very lucky actually. So had some close calls, but got through a lot better than many other people.
So walk us through a little bit of this from the perspective of those on the ground in Western North Carolina, and focus on your own drama just a little bit, if you will. You guys didn't expect too much out of this hurricane, did you?
Yes, I was personally a little naive. I did not understand that this was going to be so profound and so catastrophic. I live in West Asheville, like a little neighborhood, right about 10 minutes out of this main city of Asheville. And our neighborhood is really amazing. We have everyone kind of knows each other and talks to each other, and there's like a lot of walking around already. And so we were a little naive. We heard, oh, storm is coming. And so just thought, okay, well, we'll just prepare a little bit. And so then the storm hit, and that early in the morning when the storm was coming, a massive tree fell right on my house, and it was right on the wall where I was sleeping with my husband and my new baby, who's now 4 months old, at the time about 3.5 months old. And we just screamed and woke up. And fortunately, I mean, if it had been any, like even a foot different, it would have smashed into our bed where we were sleeping. So we were really close call, but actually ended up being totally fine. And so then after that, it was like, oh, the electricity's off. Oh, we'll have some cleanup. And then it was, wait, the water went off. Oh, wait. And so it was this cascading of realizing, oh my gosh, this is a real thing. And then all the cell phones shut off. So we had no contact, no water, no electricity, all just instantly within a row of each other. And we're like, wow, this might be a bigger problem. But we were still isolated in our little bubble and not realizing what was really happening with the extent of the flooding. And so little by little, we started walking around the neighborhood and talking to people and realizing the extent of everything.
Gareth, without housing, it's hard to have a stable life, and you have so many people in your communities there who have abruptly lost their housing. Talk about the connection and the importance of housing to that kind of stability going forward.
Yeah. housing is incredibly important for stability, and I feel that this has been such a surprise and wiped the people whose homes it's wiped out. There's like the immediate response where we've had people be able to go to shelters, but then there needs to be a phase 2 where people actually have a place to land where they can keep their jobs, stay employed. And that's been really hard because a lot of the housing solutions haven't even been in the same area where people's jobs are. And so shelters and different government solutions and hotels haven't really been able to help people maintain the consistency and stability in their life, to keep their employment and to keep the things that they need in their life going. And so then that can cascade into additional problems that weren't even there in the first place. And so being able to really create a phased approach to rebuilding, particularly in housing, is important for people to maintain some stability in order to keep enough of the other elements of their lives at play. And so I think that that's it's interesting to see how all the different pieces of housing in the community are connected, because sometimes then people who were renting a house, even if it wasn't destroyed, they have no water, they want a rent reduction, but then the landlord can't afford that for other reasons. And so it starts to become this sort of cascading effect throughout the community, which can really lead to a lot of more instability than was even there from the disaster in the first place. So I'm hoping that we can have some creative solutions from micro and macro. I have heard of one organization who was starting to take the trees that had fallen down, cut them into wood, and build tiny homes for people. And that's a grassroots community approach that's creating housing solutions. And so I think there's going to be more things we're going to hear from people creatively to come online and really help people be able to stay in the area.
So here you are in this beautiful community. You don't think of it as being particularly susceptible to hurricanes, and yet the floods, the destruction, the loss of housing, the disruption of people's lives. Boy, you must have been saying, man, there was no way we could prepare for this. Our lives have changed in an instant.
Yeah, the lives changed in an instant. And we walked down to the River Arts District, which is where a lot of artists have their businesses, small businesses, and it was completely gone. You could see the tops of some of the buildings, just the tops, and water was just gushing. And then started to realize, yeah, like so many different people have just completely lost their homes. They have lost not only, losing a home is a hard thing, but also everything that it takes in a business is gone too. And so the rebuilding process is not just, okay, how can people get homes back, but how can they even have sustainable ways to build their lives? Because everything that their income was based on is instantly stopped just as well.
Now, Gareth, you have a unique perspective on this, because not only are you a resident of West Asheville, you're also a co-founder of the Asheville Community Relief. So you have experience dealing with people in crisis. Talk a little bit about that dual role of yours.
Yeah, well, I would say one of the beautiful things about the Asheville and the surrounding area is the community. It gives it so much of its charm. And so it was pretty profound to see how that actually showed up in a moment of such surprising disaster. So our neighbors, we were helping each other. Someone had a Starlink that by 2 days into it, people could congregate and get on the internet. And then somebody let someone pull water from their swimming pool to flush the toilet. And then my neighbor had a generator and let me put my stored up breast milk in the generator because the freezers were going out. And so everybody was helping in all these different ways. And so it was very on the ground community feeling. And then by the time I found a way to get out, we started Asheville Community Relief as a way to actually bring supplies back to people. And I learned a lot through how supplies and of what people need change rapidly. So at first it was gas, water, food, and then it changed to people dealing with toxic muck and needing, Tyvek suits and respirators and different, so the needs change so fast. And so being able to really listen and adapt and keep conversations going and forging connections between otherwise disconnected communities just expands the community even wider. The tight-knit sort of immediate community to see the resilience and the trust that was built was one aspect, but the community expanding even broader. There was an entire group called the Cajun Navy that came up from Louisiana who had experience in disaster relief as well, having dealt with it in Louisiana, and just instantly drove up, set up all these different distribution hubs and ways to help people. And that was pretty profound too, in addition to having government come in. So it was really incredible to see the expansion of just community as a whole being more integrated and broader.
So when the needs are so profound, that the disaster is so widespread, how do you not get into the feeling of, oh my God, this is overwhelming. It's just too much. Do you break it into little pieces? What has proven to be a good solution to that?
Yeah. I appreciate that question because I think overwhelm is a huge thing that everybody's grappling with in very different ways. And I think so part of it is just it's so urgent that overwhelm isn't necessarily it's not as relevant. We just have to act. We just have to respond. It's so important to just show up that it's almost like there's no time to be in overwhelm. People need things, and the urgency is so profound that it actually sort of opens up a part of humanity that is in service, direct service to each other. That is a beautiful thing in the middle of something so chaotic that just calls people into their service.
What has surprised you about your own reaction and that of your neighbors?
You know, Probably that the extent of the trust and the willingness of people to share their resources did surprise me. I
Hmm.
maybe came in
Hmm.
with an idea that 2 days in, we were going to see more scarcity, and that scarcity mode was going to bring the worst out of humanity. And in some areas, there was a little bit of that, and there was some fear going, but mostly I saw abundance, responsiveness, and sharing. And so
Wow.
the reason that I liked living there was really deeply validated in the sense that I met more of my neighbors, strangers became friends, and everybody was really just trying to be there for each other. And so I feel more faith in humanity overall.
Wow, it's quite a learning experience. Of course, there are disasters all around the world. You're not alone in crisis zones of all across the globe. People are dealing with this stuff. Are there any things that you have learned going through this experience? Now, I know you knew about crisis issues before
Mhm.
and dealt with community relief, but going through it, is there anything you could say to people in war-torn areas or people facing natural disasters or who may in the future, that you've learned by living through this thing yourself?
Yeah, I would say that every single little bit helps. Our community
Hmm.
that we did with Asheville Community Relief compared to FEMA or the Cajun Navy is small, right? And so we could get caught up and say, well, we're not really able to help because our relief efforts are smaller than some of these bigger ones. So I would say what I learned includes that it does matter. Every single person can help, even if it's just impacting one person to be able to get clean water for one day, it helps. And so that is one thing I learned. The other thing I learned is that it's not only the scale of how many people you can help, even if it's small, big, anything. What also matters is that people learn that other humans are willing to show up for them. And I think that has a lasting impact. And I've learned how important that is for people in their resilience and their hope for rebuilding to have that intrinsic inspiration come online that we're gonna be there for each other, and that gives people some strength to move through all the different phases of how long rebuilding is really going to take.
Gareth, I got to tell you, you speak in very inspiring words about that. You leave me with no doubt that the people of Western North Carolina are going to, through great effort and some outside help, pull themselves back together again. I guess before you go, though, I do have to ask you, how's your kid? I mean, what an experience to have in the earliest days of life. Does she have a sense about what's going on here?
I don't think so. She's okay now, and it was really an interesting perspective to think. It's hard to be in a disaster like that in general, but then also to have this tiny little baby who needs very clean water and sanitation and all a heightened needs, and so to be able to feel like, oh wow, what are we gonna do, and have fears come up around that is very humbling. And there's a term that I've heard people say in the community recently, guiltitude, where it's as
Hmm.
it's say as bad as I have it, there's always someone in this disaster who's had it worse. And so I feel fortunate that Zora, my child, and I have been okay. And I would say that I did learn that even the community was part of that. Like I said, someone helped me get my breast milk back to a freezing area. And also, I just feel grateful. I feel waves of gratitude that we were okay and the tree missed us and also we weren't in the middle of the floodplain. And it was really wild to drive around and see the destruction and see, the big red X's on just houses that are torn down that have and helicopters flying everywhere, and just all of that bringing in such a deep shock, empathy, and then the waves of gratitude that me and Zora are okay.
Well, Gareth Gwen, I know this wasn't the plan, but I think that you have inoculated your daughter. No matter what happens in the next years of her life, she will be well prepared for all you guys pulling through this. And listen, I very much appreciate you sharing that story, especially the lessons for others around the world dealing with similar sorts of stuff. Good luck going forward.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Zonny Lumen, and I've got an art gallery in downtown Edmond called Studio Z. Over the course of the last few years, I've really been able to find my passion in helping our community through creating art. Now tonight, you'll see that I painted the buffalo, also known as the bison, Tatanka, Yanush, whatever you call it. I just hope that tonight, when you leave here, you understand what it means. In the native culture, this is one of the most sacred animals, representing peace, abundance, and new life to come. But it's also supposed to be a warning for us to stop and reflect on what we have, because what we have is a blessing. We live in a very fast-paced world, and it's hard to just pump the brakes a little bit and realize what we really have right in front of us. So everywhere I go and I get to paint this beautiful creature, I like to do a little exercise with the crowd, but I'm going to need some crowd participation if you're willing to do so. So when I say buffalo, I want you all to say blessing, okay? Buffalo. 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 All right, very good, very good. Now I want you to turn to somebody next to you and say, you have a buffalo. Else and say, you have a buffalo too.
You have a buffalo too.
All right, now very good, very good. Now on this one, this is one of the most important of the three. On this one, I want you to raise your hand and say, I have a buffalo. And it is true. Every single one of us in this room, we have a blessing, we have a gift, we have a purpose, and we have to do what we can to give that buffalo blessing back to the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. God bless you. God bless your work.
We have a special treat this year as we commemorate United Nations Day at the Global Housing Foundation. We're going to be auctioning off a painting by Native American artist Zonny Lumen. It's a painting of a white buffalo. You'll have a chance to bid on this to help raise some money for the Housing Foundation and shine a light on this terrific award-winning artist. Zonny is especially known for his live artworks, where he literally creates a unique piece of art in front of a live audience who watches him as he goes through that process, that creative process. But he's taken time in his studio to produce this white buffalo just for the Global Housing Foundation. Now, it's not surprising that Zonny would do this sort of thing. He's known for his charitable work, so often donating artwork to groups that are doing well. The cause of housing is something that has pulled at him for a long time, partly, I think, because of his Native American heritage, having seen some of the housing issues that have affected his community. But he's donated this white buffalo. You'll have a chance to place a bid on it, and not only to acquire a terrific piece of art, but also to do your part to help the housing work of the Global Housing Foundation around the world. Joining us now, Zonny Lumen. Zonny, good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me today.
So you've made a donation of one of your paintings. I know people collect these things around the nation and around the world. Would you talk just a little bit about the white buffalo and why that's important and why it is something that's meaningful to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the buffalo in general are one of the most sacred animals to the native culture, representing peace, abundance, new life to come is supposed to be a beacon of hope, but it's also supposed to be a warning. When we see it, we're supposed to be warned, and just be in a time of reflection, to be grateful and thankful for all the good things that we have. And sometimes it's kind of hard to realize that because we live in such a fast-paced world, and maybe we get desensitized to things around us, but there is so many good things, going on every day, and so many blessings that are around us. And the buffalo, and when I paint that, is really just supposed to embody that and just hopefully remind people and share that with them. So.
No, Sally, as I was mentioning, I mean, you have a long history of doing charitable stuff, particularly in your part of the world. What is it about the cause of housing that speaks to you? Why, of all the groups that you could be working with, have you chosen to work with the Global Housing Foundation?
It's hard. It's hard for me to picture what it would be like to not have a home or not to have a roof. I've been lucky enough to have that my whole life, and I know people that haven't, and I've met friends and family that have shared their stories about that. And if there's any way that I can contribute to help make to help put a board or put a roof over someone's head, I want to do that, and I want to be able to share what I can do to help other people. And so it just hit me in a certain place. And when Sharon had reached out and talked to me about it, I just knew immediately, you know what, I'm there, and I'm here, and I'll use my hands I might not be able to build the house, but I'll build the canvas, and I'll build the painting. So,
Terrific. Well, folks are going to have a chance to bid on this and help both acquire an amazing piece of art, as well as help an organization that is just providing direct services to folks who really need it most. I don't need to tell you about the long and sometimes tragic history of Native American peoples and the land and housing and being uprooted, and the connection that there is between a human being and the place that they live. But talk about that a little bit for folks who may not be as tuned into the experience that you have based on your own heritage and the people of your community.
It's a kind of a hard topic to talk about, but it is a very real topic, and not everybody fully understands or knows exactly, but my people and the people that were here before us, and maybe at one point had a home and then was taken from them, or was forced to relocate and move across new territories that weren't necessarily theirs, and forced into certain places. And it's not always fair, but we're here today, and I think that part of my mission and part of my calling in this world is to just do my job, to be able to make sure that doesn't happen again, and make sure that if that is happening to other people, then I'm going to do what I can to help that situation. And if we are forced to move, or people are forced to move, try to give them at least a roof over their head that's comfortable and a healthy place to be. So
Yeah. It's interesting. As we have talked to other folks who have been in crisis situations where their housing was destroyed, or they were uprooted by war or natural disaster, one of the themes that keeps coming back, and I've been trying to process this in my own head. Maybe you can help with a little perspective on it. People will often say, "Hey, you're in Ukraine. There's a war going on. You ought to move away. Get out of there." Or folks right now in Western North Carolina, right, who are dealing with terrible floods from Hurricane Helen, and things they were not remotely prepared to deal with before. When people say, "Man, you should just get out of there," the answer we keep getting is, it's not that simple. I feel a connection to this place. I am this place. I don't want to just move away and start over somewhere new. Is that a thought that connects with you on some level?
I think so, but I know it's hard to leave your home, and it's hard to leave maybe the roots that you've built, but I think it's important also to remember that, you know, we can build other places as well, as long as we have, you know, our people and the right care and the right support around us, that hopefully I would see, you know, light on the other side, that, you know, there is chance to rebuild, and there is chance to regroup and to sink new roots in. But man, it's hard to leave home. I know that for sure. And it's hard to leave where you were raised. So
Yeah. Well, Charlie, if folks are interested in checking out your artwork, Studio Z is in Edmond, Oklahoma. Is that somewhere that people can visit, or can they find you online? What's a good way for folks to check out some of the work that you've done?
yeah, so absolutely online. You can find my website at zonlylumen.com. On social media, also zonlylumen. That's ZONLYLOOMAN. If you're ever in Oklahoma or Oklahoma City, we're just about 15 minutes north of downtown Oklahoma City in downtown Edmond. And yeah, we have a gallery out there. Probably the most artwork you've ever seen in the amount of square footage that's available, stacked on top of each other in all sorts of ways that we can fit the art in there. It's in there. So it's quite the experience if you're ever able to come by the studio and the gallery.
Terrific. And the very first stuff folks may want to do is take a look at this white buffalo, place a great bid for it. You will not only be collecting a terrific piece of art, but you'll be helping a cause that certainly needs your support. Zonly, it's really terrific of you to join this, and I appreciate your words of wisdom for some of these issues that folks are facing all around the world. Zonly Lumen, real good of you to join us today.
Thank you.
We expect you to live every day. Every day you can take that to the fullest step and fall away.
I wear my heart on my sleeve.
I wear my heart on my.
But no, I can't hide it. That's how it's gonna read. That's how it's gonna read. I prayed a lot and I prayed a lot. Just to stand right here. It was a lie. It was a lie. Ain't nothing been free. Nothing been free. Ain't nothing been earned. Ain't nothing been earned. You don't know nothing about me and this earth. No, you don't. You don't know nothing about me and the earth. No, you don't. I found my tracks and ground through the dirt. Yeah. Put my hand on a tree and I pray, save me. I put my hands in the air. All for me. Fall, don't care. If you fall, follow me. If I leave, you finna follow me.
I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, this is such terrific work. How can I get involved? In fact, there are so many ways to help the tremendous work of the Global Housing Foundation, but none of them is more important than our ambassadors program, where talented people bring their special interests and abilities and focus them directly on the needs of improving housing in places of crises around the world. Here to tell us about the ambassador program, Owen Gwynn is the chair emeritus of the Global Housing Foundation. He has given so much and is eager for you to join him in this important work. Owen?
Hello, I'm Owen Gwynn, and I'd like to speak for a minute about Global Housing Foundation's Ambassador Program. We look at ways that we can nurture partnerships between the different players that help build homes and solve our workforce housing problems in different areas. So we work with local, we work with regional and global companies and people to try to come up with ideas to help solve these problems. we have identified people that's their wheelhouse. That's the area. That's their expertise. They know about developing houses. They know about where the problems are. And they have come to us with ideas. And these people have become our ambassadors for great ideas for solving these problems and helping us with solutions. And we're looking for people on wherever they may be, that would like to help join Global Housing Foundation and give us ideas, send us project examples, and help us solve these problems. Together, we can do a lot better job than we can individually. So if you're interested, contact us, and I'm sure there's a way that we can use you.
You see, I promised you a wide-ranging conversation, and I think that we have delivered. Thanks to our guests today who've brought us inside some of the most compelling efforts on the housing and health fronts all around the world, from Uganda to Ukraine, to the Native American lands of the United States, to the hurricane zone of Western North Carolina, focusing in not just on the big challenges that remain out there, but some of the smartest and most encouraging solutions that great minds around the world have helped to organize through the Global Housing Foundation. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how can I help? What can I do to get involved in this fascinating, but still very large and challenging issue? Well, there are a couple of very good ways. You can go to globalhousing.org and donate to help send us some money, which was all very important in these efforts. Use your own resources to help us. That's at globalhousing.org. Or if you want to join the Ambassadors Program or learn more about the work of the Global Housing Foundation, go to globalhousing.net. Either one of those sites will funnel you right in to the world-changing work of the Global Housing Foundation and help you figure out how you might best be involved. Yes, the issues are daunting, but the solutions are coming. They are practical, and we are on the verge of figuring them out. Ellis Henican saying thanks so much for joining us in this conversation. A special thanks to all of our guests who brought us inside their special work. And we hope to see you real soon at the Global Housing Foundation.